Shopping for citizenship is our topic today. With me in the finews studio is Kaelin to talk about how this is done, how much it costs, and which countries are high in demand. Kaelin is also the chair of Helium Partners, a company which enables people to acquire foreign citizenship. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Jade. It's a pleasure to be here.
So can you tell me why people want to change their nationality?
There are many reasons, of course. I mean, I would say if you take a good example, it will be illustrative. Let's say a family in South Africa that has a problem to travel visa-free with its South African passport. It's very convenient to have another citizenship for that. And then also you don't know whether you can still live in this country in 5 years' time. So if you were there today and live there, you would think about that. And at least for your children, you probably have at least the idea to have a foreign residence in case. And also to study and for other reasons of that nature of international expansion of your family. So I think that's a good example that is very traditionally clear. Now with the pandemic, there are many more new dimensions to that. People are thinking of access during lockdowns. Even people in countries like Austria or Spain are thinking, well, I don't want to be the next lockdown in this country because it's too restrictive, it's too difficult, and also access to healthcare. So there are many reasons. Yeah.
And how do you go about it? So say if you're living in one particular country and you want to have access to another, you want to go abroad.
Well, now there are over 100 countries worldwide that enable residence or citizenship through investment. But of course, it's not just for wealthy people. That's what we deal with. But if you would like to go somewhere else, you will find many different categories to find work, to study, to set up a business. What we deal with is specifically for entrepreneurs and investors. But even for that, it's like half the world offers opportunities for that. And about maybe 50 countries have very active programs. So it's big. Yeah.
So how is Helium Partners involved in this?
Yeah, we have like two different businesses almost. So the main thing we do is we advise private clients worldwide in over 35 offices, where we help them to decide which countries make sense, and then help to apply, mount the application, and basically handhold them through the process until they are there where they want to be. Sometimes even ongoing further, because in many countries you need to obtain invest in real estate, and then this needs to be managed and so on. So we also do that. So we also help people to manage everything on private client level. And then the other thing we do, we are worldwide very unique in that, by far the most important company that advises governments. So we help governments to design, implement, improve, and globally promote such programs. And here, I mean, many of the current programs you see, they have basically our handwriting. We were involved in one way or another. That's really where we pioneered this business.
And how many countries run such schemes, or what is it they hope to get out of them?
These are two different questions. So how many countries? There are about 100 countries worldwide that have legislation in place that enable residence or citizenship by investment. So about half the world has that. There are probably about 50 that are really what we would call active. So for example, France and the Netherlands have such programs, but hardly anyone applies. That has to do with the criteria that these countries have set. So for us, we don't count France or the Netherlands. But there are about 50 that are really active that we work with. And if you look at more are residence by investment programs, and there are about 15, 16 programs that are citizenship by investment programs.
And what is it they hope to get
what
out of them?
What do countries hope to
Yes.
get out of this? Yeah, it depends a bit on the country. So on a small, in a small jurisdiction, of course, this can become very important for the national development, like we have seen in the Eastern Caribbean. I'm very proud that the work we did there, because we have basically helped in the Eastern Caribbean to survive the financial crisis. The big financial crisis, and then now the pandemic. You can imagine if you're a small island that basically lives off tourism, and you have 2 years of no tourism, it's dramatic. And in many ways, it was the only lifeline for some of the Caribbean states, was the citizenship investment program. In a larger country like United States, for instance, with its EB5 program, it's very much used for regional development. So if you invest in the US, in New York, you have to invest in one level, but if you invest in a rural area that is depopulated and has economic issues, you have to invest only half. So most of the investment goes in those places in America where the money is really needed. So also for a large country, the regional development, economic development aspect is very important.
Sure. You mentioned the pandemic there. Can you tell me how popularity changed during the pandemic? Did you see new countries become extremely popular which weren't popular before?
Well, I think what the pandemic really did is more that it opened up a whole new dimension. Like what I mentioned before, say a South African family, it's clear why they would want to have multiple residence or citizenship. It's very clear. It's also clear to you and anyone that looks at that. If you were in South Africa, you would do the same. But now you suddenly, with this pandemic, where overnight, almost like within 1 week to another, for instance, in Europe, it was particularly stark. All the borders closed, and as a German, you could exactly go back to Germany, as a French to France, and as a Swiss back to Switzerland, and that's it. The entire free movement collapsed. And then you were locked down, and different countries had different measures, and now we have people in Spain or in Italy saying, well, the next lockdown, I'm not going to be in this country. And the only way you can achieve that is by having at least residence rights or even alternative citizenship to enable you to actually move in times of crisis. And I think there's a lot more people now that have realized that, and we have seen an enormous boom of demand from that angle now, worldwide. I mean, the same is in America, the same is in Africa, in Asia, and the Middle East. It's everywhere, because there are, of course, different angles, but it's everywhere. And also, suddenly, when, before maybe people said, what do I need a passport from Antigua, But actually, it turns out Antigua was a really good place to be during the pandemic. Sun is shining, fresh fish, coconuts, very nice place to be. It's generally a nice place to be, but people thought, it's very remote. What am I ever going to do there? Now suddenly you see that in some situations it's actually very good to be citizen of a country that is quite remote and quite safe. And this is a completely new dimension that we have seen now opening, which of course, it has been incredible demand now for also for us. It's really difficult to handle because we have so much to do, with that.
Can you tell us some other countries that are high on the list of places where people want to move to or go?
It is worldwide. I mean, you need to see, I think, regionally what people are looking for. So, for instance, we are since many years working with the government of Thailand for their Thailand residence program. Now, if you look at the Thailand residence program, it's very interesting, but it has a completely different composition. For instance, I think number 2 is Japanese clients that like to have that as second residence, to go golfing there, and easy access to a nice place in the tropics. Completely different than, say, Antigua or Malta or in Portugal. So it depends. And I think worldwide, if you look from different angles, everything is in demand depending from which angle you look.
And some might actually object to the idea that nationalities is something you can buy. Why is that?
Well, first of all, I reject the idea that you can buy it, because basically you have to qualify on a number of criteria, including investment. And I think what you're talking about is really this connection with money that is for some people repugnant. But in the end, you naturalize after 2 years of being there. In some countries, like in France, if you're francophone, you can very easily become French in 2 years. There's no difference with that. Actually, in Malta, it takes nearly 2 years through the investment route. It takes you at least a year and then another half year until you finish. It's almost the same. So the only difference is there it's about money. In France, it's about francophonie. Even you have nothing to do with France otherwise. So it depends. And I think the key problem we see in this argumentation is that one still thinks of the nationality in some ways of like we did 100 years ago when there were national armies, and if you were German, you couldn't possibly also be French because the countries were at war, and also with Britain and so on. It was very different. Now, dual nationality is allowed in most countries. It's much more fluid, and citizenship is viewed, in effect, already now by the majority of people in the world more as a club membership Like, how much do I get from the state? What is the services the state provides? And what do I pay? Taxes and other fees that I have to pay. And what does that give me? And if you look at it that way, I think you're very close to saying, well, what is it wrong to give additional club membership to people who substantially contribute to the society, and give them in return a residence right or even a citizenship? There's nothing wrong with that, and I think very much that that's the future.
Okay, so we've spoken about financial contribution. What is there also a social benefit that these people can add to the country's
Yeah,
economy?
absolutely. I mean, it's not just, if you look at the most popular programs that are real estate based, I mean, mostly they have supported significantly slums in real estate markets. And real estate is a very important economic factor that creates a lot of jobs or destroys a lot of jobs if it goes down. So by employing these programs to help support, for instance, real estate market, like we did in Latvia years ago or now in Portugal, is very important. I mean, it helps the whole country, to stabilize a very important sector of the economy. And the same is with, direct contributions. Like, for instance, if you take Malta, the Malta Social and Economic Development Fund that we helped design, assisted Malta critically during this pandemic, where other countries, wealthier countries, were able, to have furlough schemes and other things financed by large economies. A small economy like Malta did not have this facility, but thanks to this program, they had, and they went very well through the pandemic thanks to the Zinchipa investment program. So huge social benefit for the country.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Could you tell me how many passports you have?
Yeah, this is a question that comes very often. And, as you can see, I'm very transparent and very open about pretty much everything. But there's one thing I keep for myself, and that's how many passports I actually have. But what I can tell you, I'm Swiss, and I'm still Swiss, and it's still my most favorite passport.
Thank you for coming in to speak to us today.
Thank you, Jade.